tonight's program, we talk about using the player as a camera.
It's an interesting decision to try to use the game to tell it like a television episode.
The Vega Colony. Is it in the Foundry?
It's not the same map from the tutorial, it's the one from the old STF.
And small changes we see filtering down to the Foundry.
But at some point they updated the look of the ground Cardassians. They gave them, I don't know, it's like bigger, huge shoulder and collar pieces.
Join us for the Foundry Roundtable.
Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogyn1701. With me is a man who spent 19 years in prison for ending a sentence in a preposition, Greendragoon.
The charges are not true.
And we have Markhawkman, who's the recent impeached mayor of a small Andorian town. Impeached for what? We don't know.
Yeah.
And Hippiejohn, who has been, air quote, hiking the Appalachian Trail.
It got to be a really long hike. I had to give it up. I'm just not that good of a walker.
And we begin tonight with a little bit of news. As I put in the show notes last time, we did get a response to the Romulan Foundry question from Dan Stahl. Actually, it was posted the day after we recorded last time, so I wasn't able to get it into the show. So for those who haven't seen, what he said was, and this is a direct quote, "At launch, Romulans will not be able to play Foundry missions until they choose an ally." This will happen about level 10. And they can only play Foundry missions created for that ally. As many have suggested, we will be adding a new filter that will allow Foundry authors to create Romulan-specific missions that only Romulans can play and team for. No ETA has been provided at this point. So bottom line is, we are getting what I wanted, just not right away, which I'm fine with. You know, I think the Foundry is obviously not a priority with this patch, as much as I'd love it to be a priority for every patch. That I'm not in charge of such things.
I'm hoping that when they do finally put in the Romulan category for Foundry, it will be something that Romulans will be able to play at before level 10. But I don't suppose it will actually be a huge difference.
Well, there is a slight level restriction to the Foundry already for Fed characters. What is it, like 7?
7 or 9.
Okay.
Yeah, can't get into it until you're 7 or 9.
And even for Klingon characters, I think you have to do a level or two before you can do Foundry missions.
1 level.
Yeah.
I've played enough Klingon characters to know that.
I think it's the same level that you unlock the duty officer system.
Yeah, pretty much on both sides, I think that's true.
So, it'd be nice to do it from level 1. I mean, how cool would it be to be able to level only doing Foundry missions? But in any case, we're kind of stuck with being able to play Fed or KDF missions for the time being. I know that, I'm cool with that. As soon as I can get a programmer on it and fix that, that's great. But of course, I will keep poking them with a stick until they make good on the promise.
That's the way to do it.
You get a pain stick.
Yes, a Klingon pain stick.
The price of features is eternal
vigilance.
Persistence.
Should be further proof to everyone out there that Foundry authors don't just get whatever we want.
Yeah.
We work really hard for it.
And more that, Greendragoon, why don't you tell us what's been happening with the Tribble Foundry?
So, unfortunately, I decided to poke around in the Tribble Foundry and just to see if anything had changed. I wasn't really expecting anything. Unfortunately, I did find a change, and it wasn't a change we're going to like. Basically, the costume import has disappeared. It's no longer available. And as much as it really hurts to see this feature go, just because it was such a useful trick, it's not surprised, because it's also an incredibly buggy client crashing trick.
Incredible.
Well, I'm currently, I think that it's something temporary that they're doing because of so much of the other stuff on Tribble is, kind of buggy and unstable at the moment.
Maybe.
Now I seem to remember there being some other times where features did not show up in the Tribble Foundry that were fine when it went to live. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was.
Well, I mean, I did get confirmation from Cryptic Frost that this was an intentional removal. I can't say for sure whether it's permanent or not, but it does not surprise me, just considering, I mean, yeah, you can crash your client with this one. I mean, usually in QA, in the world of QA, that's considered a show-stopping bug.
And going from past experiences that, Cryptic's usual MO is to remove the thing while it's being fixed rather than leave up the buggy version.
Yeah. I mean, which is unfortunate, because, I mean, yeah, it did allow us to get access to a number of things that are not currently in the Foundry, and a lot of options that are not currently in the Foundry. That said, I have a backup plan.
Yeah. What's your backup?
And my backup plan is I'm actually going to load up bugged versions of characters into a central template mission, as well as many ships, custom ships as I can find or get in, and basically hang on to that. And in the off chance that they do not take the time to write a script to go through and clean out all of these bugged NPC costumes, I'm hoping I can hang on to them past the launch of the new expansion. In which case, whenever I want to start a new project, I just make a duplicate of the my template project.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. It's go through and make those NPCs now, so that, because we've seen in the past where they've removed something and we've been able to use versions that we had saved before they removed it.
Yeah.
So
that's my hope anyway. I mean, it looks literally like they just pulled that particular feature.
Mm-hmm. I may do that myself.
But when you were looking at it, did you notice whether or not you could use custom-created costumes in that version of the build? Because one thing I noticed when I was poking around last week sometime was that at the time I was not able to rescan any ground characters to use a custom costume at all.
I seem to vaguely remember this actually being a bug that popped up. Does anybody else recall this? I thought somebody reported this.
I had heard about it on the forums, I think.
I think I saw Mark post about it, yeah.
Yeah. I was just asking if you noticed it when you were looking at it.
I didn't literally test bringing in trying to skin a costume to a character.
Well, I guess Tribble Foundry is something of a work in progress, and since we're not getting anything that I know of this update, we probably shouldn't take anything that's going on with Tribble Foundry to be absolute gospel. This is how it's going to be.
Sure.
I don't think that it is. I think that what's happening with Tribble is they're putting all kinds of new things into the game, and they're putting them into Tribble first, and it's all the Legacy of Romulus stuff, the new ships, the new costumes, the new everything, basically. And if they were letting us have access to everything that the Foundry can do with all of those random files floating around the game, they probably want to make sure everything's going to go right before they open up, everything for us. So.
Yeah. So that's one thing is that because the costume character or creator that they currently have for the Foundry, well, one, it has several severe limitations, even compared to the regular costume creator that players use, but also the new costume creator that they have for regular player use in Tribble has a whole bunch of beta features that I don't really think that they want to try putting into the Foundry until they're finalized. I mean, that's just my thoughts on it.
I suppose it's hard to say. We'll just kind of have to keep watching it over the next few weeks and see what happens.
It's more than just a few weeks. I mean, we've got until May 21st. It's the end of the month before.
So we've got about what,
6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks before we can say that anything that we have seen on Tribble is finalized. It seems almost amazing to me, but it seems like for the first time since I started playing the game, they're really, really, really listening to what people have to say about their experiences on Tribble, and things are changing quickly to hopefully address those expectations and make people have a better experience. So
now, I think the thing that people should always keep in mind when the question comes up is whether they're listening or not, is just because they didn't do what you said they should do doesn't mean they're not listening.
They didn't listen. Yeah.
But yeah, they are taking a lot of player feedback, especially with the new UI.
Yeah.
They're really
Which
working with the
I
community
thought,
on that one.
Yeah, I thought it already looked good, and then just them addressing some of the things that I know were said on the forums and elsewhere, and really amazing.
Yeah, I think Thomas has done good
Amazing
work.
changes.
We've always liked Thomas.
Yeah, it's got to be, honestly, it's my favorite part of what I've seen on Tribble so far, is the new UI. So, absolutely.
So, I just confirmed, Mark, you are correct. I cannot load up any custom costumes onto an NPC on Tribble.
Yeah, so obviously, the Tribble Foundry is not in exactly working order, so I wouldn't worry about things that are there or not there.
Well, plenty of time to panic later.
Yeah. If after our mandatory 3-week downtime, we load up our Foundry missions and we can't do that, then panic.
Yeah.
So, let's move on to what are we working on? And I'm actually going to take a pass on this one because what I'm working on, I'm going to talk about in our discussion section. So,
Okay.
Greendragoon, what have you been working on?
Well, this
Is
is
part
actually
2 out yet?
Part 2 is not out yet, but I did something that you guys are going to like, and I sat down and figured out how long it's going to take. And I actually, after sitting down and figuring out each step of the process, it spit out a final date.
Ooh.
Which we are revealing for the first time exclusively here on the Foundry Roundtable.
Well, they'll hear the motivation to get it done. The final launch date I got was July 5th.
Now, if you don't make that launch date, we're going to have to start like a big forum thread about broken promises.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be our discussion topic. We'll be broken
If
promises.
it ever was in doubt with my mind why Cryptic doesn't want to tell us things.
Yeah. No release dates until you're absolutely sure you can make it.
Just be Peregrine Falcon's list, and if you want a dev and a player pulled something like that, you probably wouldn't want to talk to them either.
So can you give us an idea, sort of like what's left to do?
Well, I mean, I think I've said before I'm somewhere around the halfway part. I've counted it out, and it's actually a 9-map mission. They're going to be, although I take it back. It's a 10-map mission. One of them is a recap map that basically looks back on what happened in Part 1, people who need to catch up. I'd say most of them have some kind of construction. Some of them are not quite to completed. Others are really close to being completed, or close enough that only minor changes are going to change. Only a couple of them are to what I consider rough draft stage, where all the objectives are in place, everything's functioning, and at least some rough form of dialogue is in place. And then there's a stage that none of them are in at the moment, which I consider final draft, and that is basically where I go through and do the final pass on all the dialogue.
Yeah, that's a good last step that sometimes I'm too lazy to do.
Yeah. Well,
I always think I'm going to do that, and then I just never do.
When I say rough dialogue in the rough draft, I mean really rough. I mean just enough to get out the basic gist of what I'm trying to say. Sometimes I'll wrap
exactly what you mean.
Write stuff out, but 9 times out of 10, heavy amounts of dialogue will change between the rough and final draft. I also worked in a little bit of time for some beta testing.
Ooh.
So July 5th is the final launch date, not the date for beta testing, which will be a little earlier.
Very cool.
All
right, Hippie.
Actually, there's one other thing I did want to talk about is last weekend I got to be an expert in the Foundry Authors Academy, week 2.
Oh, nice. How'd that go?
That was a lot of fun. It was my first time live streaming anything, which was an interesting challenge. Cerberus assures me that it's not normally that hard. But at the same time, I got to meet at least one aspiring author who was very ravenous for new information. I actually got to impart some rather complex tricks to him, a lot of which I make on the fly.
That's excellent.
Yay! That's
the whole
the
point
whole
of what
idea.
that was for, yeah.
I'm really excited. I mean, and then guess here, not this weekend, but next weekend, they have a big contest for all the aspiring authors.
Isn't it like do a mission in 24 hours or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. And then I think the winner gets spotlighted.
Yep.
Which you can do. I did one, and actually was fairly pleased with how it turned out. This is months and months ago.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see how this finishes up.
Sweet.
Awesome. Very, very cool.
All right. Hippie, what are you working on?
Working on, except for writing here and there when I get the time, I've been busy and have not opened the game nearly as much as I do most times, and when I have, I haven't opened the editor. I haven't been inspired to do so this week. So, working on in the Foundry, besides storytelling and thinking about story, nothing. Sorry to say.
Well, that's kind of a big step, though.
It is. It's
certainly
certainly a part of what you're of what I'm working on, but. Yeah, still, I just didn't open up the editor and actually do anything with it, so.
All right. Mark, what have you been working on?
Well, other than tinkering in the Tribble Foundry, not a whole lot. For some reason, that one mission I have on Tribble Foundry, I can't get it to republish, and I don't know why. Oh, well.
That's strange.
I
know why. Yeah.
This message that says log and then republish later or something like that. I attempted to republish it like 8 times or so, hasn't worked, so I'm just going to...
You could try importing it and publishing it in a new slot.
Maybe. It might have something to do with the custom costume thing, because this mission does have an old custom costume that I created sometime back in, like, season. So that might have something to do with it.
I would test with a basic missing just to make sure that publishing hasn't been disabled entirely, or is bugged at the moment.
Not a bad idea.
Cool. Well, let's move it on to mission reviews. And I'll go ahead and start. I played who's the current... No, not the current Spotlight. The last contest winner, which is Depths of Nukara Prime, which, if you guys haven't played this mission, you should definitely give it a go. If only for the custom builds, because they're just fantastic. The caves that he made. Those are the best-looking caves I have ever seen. And I don't know how many hours he must have spent on that. Because you guys know getting those rocks to line up the way you want them, to create walls and bridges, and oh my god, that's just got to be mind-numbingly difficult.
I try to do things in batches.
Oh, absolutely.
I said the map design was very, very, very fun in that mission. Enjoyed it a great deal.
And I liked one thing that he did is he sort of brought in a new alien empire, you could call it.
Ashtar.
Yeah, which was kind of, at least struck me, as a lot like the Federation. It's a collection of species with their own agenda and their own attitudes towards things and things that they want. And I think a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people use the established races. I know I have, for one thing. That's one thing that I want to try and do better is inventing my own races, and making them multidimensional and things like that.
Well, I like to use the less seen races, but because I have in more than once done missions that involve Bosliks, which, let's face it, the Bosliks were one of those races that you would see in 2 or 3 missions or episodes, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
You didn't see the Bosliks as an empire. You saw 2 or 3 individuals doing whatever.
But I definitely appreciate a guy who goes to the trouble of thinking up motivations and histories and backstories, because it was all there. It was all in a little console that you could access. Is the whole information on this empire, which of course was all optional, which I much appreciated, because I was kind of in a hurry and looking to get through and skipped that. I don't know if there's anything in particular that I would say needs improvement. I think it was a pretty good mission. One thing that I liked, that it's a good advice for all authors, is when you make a great custom map, make sure you have the player spend a lot of time in it. Because that's one of the things that he did. He made these great caves, and he spent a lot of time in these caves, doing lots of things, going all different places, fighting some people, talking to some people. And I thought that was great, because there's nothing that's sort of sadder than going to a map that's just, oh my god, look at this map, it's huge, it's great, it's beautiful.
Now we're leaving.
Now we're leaving. So, that's good advice for all authors. Alright, Hippie, what have you been playing?
Surprise, surprise, I played a couple of missions on the KDF side.
Now officially a Clink player.
Apparently so. At least most of the time that I spend in-game, I spend playing my Klingon team, because I'm really enjoying the ship and combination and the whole thing that I have. So, I played a mission that only had 20 reviews. When I look for the ones that are under 5, but all the ones that are under 5 are like, killed 700 Gorn, and I'm just like, no, that's not what I want. I want a story. So I found one that only had 20 plays at the time I played it, that was called Klingon Academy's Hamlet, or K-Hamlet. I don't know what the intention was there. By a guy called MolotovZav, or MolotovZav. The whole idea behind the thing, now, it has 20 plays, currently average rating of about, like 3.5, somewhere in there, whatever. I thought it was probably one of the coolest ideas that I've heard on the Klingon side. It's a great, great idea. That is, the villain comes out of nowhere. And it's a super short thing. It's like, run into a room, shoot some stuff, because that's where the bad guy is, and you're done. And it's got such a great premise of, go to the Klingon Academy because something is troubling their production of Hamlet at the Klingon Academy. And what a wonderful idea that the villain just seems to come out of nowhere. It's kind of like, how are they even on Kronos, let alone at the well-protected military academy of the Klingons? And the other issue that I have with it is, so it has that, so it has a really big logic leap at the end. Like, I don't see where the villain comes from other than if you feel like playing it, play it. If not, the other problem with it is that the tool of the Foundry isn't used in the slightest. There's a map and a couple of things put on the map to interact with. It's like, here, interact with this console, shoot these things, interact with this desk. And that's all there. That's really all there is. There's not a reskinning of enemies to make them more, weirdly appropriate in some way. There's not even time taken to rename the assets that are used. So when I'm told to go talk to the son, now here's the thing, the story, like I say, has this great premise. I'm told to go talk to the son of the theater manager and all of this, and there's talk of honor and really good use of, at least I think, decent use of Klingon language. I'm not really that up on Klingon language. But when I go to meet him, he's known as Klingon Warrior Op 1. Like, there's not even the time taken to rename the characters that I'm interacting with, or the objects that I'm interacting with, or the enemies that I'm fighting. There's nothing at all done with any kind of customization of maps or anything. What it is it's got this super, super strong premise, I think, of save the Klingon version of Hamlet somehow. I mean, Hamlet's a this brilliant, tale. You could even kind of retell it a little bit with the player in some kind of a starring role. I mean, I don't know what I expected, but I expected more than was there.
I'd always, one of the things a mission I wanted to make is a Klingon version of a Shakespeare play, where you were that's not a production of the play, like. But you were in it. You're in that story.
That's what this felt like. That's what this felt like it wanted to be, because that's kind of hinted at in the initial dialogue that you hear, that gets you into the mission. That maybe you're going to be a part of this whole thing, and then it just abruptly ends after you fight the enemy. And that's it feels like maybe the author intended to do more and published it just to publish it because he just wanted to publish it or something. I don't know. It just feels like such a great premise with full of a lot of really neat and good ideas that never meets its potential. I try to be as constructive as I can, and what I can say is there's so much there to build on it. That's what I can say about the one mission that I played. And the other mission that I played, I went and played pretty much. I mean, I'm playing all of the Spotlight missions. They're just, they're huge sources of dilithium for me.
You played
so. I have played yours, Raktajino in a Jar. Yeah, I played that one.
Did you like it?
I did. That one was quite fun. It's not fresh in my mind right now, because it was probably last week or the week before that I played it. You've got my review. And I'll play it again. I'm one of those people that if I can find someone who's willing to do it with me and play their mission at my pace, even though it's going to make, the enemy spawn weird in a combat somewhere, I want to run it with someone who, I would run it with the author so I could be after I run through this area, I can take a pause and go, hey, so these are my impressions of what was happening right there, right then when I was playing it, because those are important impressions to know, in my opinion, is what are the things that you're feeling when playing the mission so that, you can make whatever changes you want to make to inspire what you want within the mission. I don't know. I like playing it with an author.
I'd love to do that with you, except I can't really change that one.
Yeah, that one, the spotlights are the spotlights are kind of locked in. Yeah. But I've been playing a lot of the Klingon Spotlight missions, and probably will start picking one to talk about one to talk about every week. This week, I had the looking for something that wasn't very heavily played and seemed like it had story, and it did, and it's got a really strong premise and a really great idea, and there's so much more that the Foundry tool can do, and that the story that is there for the Klingon Academy's K Hamlet, your Camlet, I don't know, that it should be the author should revisit it and expand and make it bigger. That's what I played this week, and some Spotlight missions.
Well, I can tell you the one that I wanted to adapt, the Shakespeare play that I wanted to adapt is Coriolanus. I think that's just great. I mean, oh, hang on. We'll edit this out. I did not realize my police radio was still on.
Not what that weird noise was.
I thought Drogyn had strange pets.
I meant that I was worried he was on a dial-up connection.
I have a Borg as a pet around the house, but he's a Borg from the 1990s. So yeah, he's dial-up.
You know that the Triple Borg in games sometimes make a modem sound.
I do. I've heard it do that. But as I was saying, I think that one's ripe because you could make it this famous Klingon commander, he gets disgraced. He joins the Romulans and leads an attack on Kronos. It's Shakespeare and Klingons are just. I've always defined the Klingons as Shakespeare as read by Vikings.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's very Shakespeare as read by Vikings.
Of course, all the major Klingon actors are all Shakespearean actors.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we sort of that whole Christopher Plummer thing from Star Trek 6. You must experience it in the original Klingon. Anyway, let's see. Mark, what have you been playing?
Not as much as I really would have liked to. I spent more time tinkering with the Tribble Foundry than actually playing missions. Although I did kind of want to get back to that thing we were talking about with the ash cars, because one of the things that I noticed about the ash car that was kind of interesting is that one way that they're different from the Federation is that the ash car civilization has one race as the core species of the group, and that race has one severe issue, which namely they're kind of dying out. I don't remember the exact reason for it, but part of their reason for it being, I guess you could say, more proactive in the way they interact with their neighbors is they're trying to find a solution to their problem.
Which is part of what they find on this planet. They think it's going to be that solution.
Mm-hmm.
Which on Nukara, Brian. This is Depths of Nukara again. Yeah, and this is all that information that you can get if you go and look up his on that information console, the library computer console, which I did not do, but it's definitely fascinating, and I love when authors include that. All right, Greendragoon, what have you been playing?
I actually took picked one off of the forums, and I played The Sky Above, the Clouds Below by Malize. It's an interesting mission. I mean, the author goes and tries to do something very strange, or I should say strange for a Foundry mission. He tries to build it like an episode. So there's actually two parts. There's kind of two plots to this episode. The first is a normal, you're the captain of your crew, and you're in the system, and you're basically are patrolling or checking out this one planet to basically mine it. You get there, find out that the Klingons have beat you to it. Just go and take out the Klingons. One of them escapes and ends up crash landing on another one of the planets in the system, which happens to be inhabited by a pre-industrial civilization. And you go down, capture the last Klingon, and beam up all of this stuff. The other plot, and this is where it gets very strange, is basically these scenes of this character living on this pre-industrial planet, and his story of how he's basically an astronomer who, and the planet is very much at that stage that Earth was, where when astronomy was first started to really be explored, where everyone wanted to think that the Earth was the center of the universe, and any suggestion otherwise was pretty much, you're a heretic and we're going to burn you at the stake. So he's kind of in this situation. He's been watching the skies, and the funny thing about their planet is it's got a very dense cloud layer, and in fact at one point he mentions that the observatory literally has to be built above the first cloud layer, and so there's not a lot of opportunity for them to even see the stars, let alone observe them. But it so happens he is observing and witnesses this battle between your ship and the Klingons, and this kind of ends up leading, his findings get out, and basically he gets brought up on trial by the local religious authorities for heresy, and ultimately leads to him being sentenced to execution. And at that particular point, the mission bugged out for me, and I couldn't finish it. He was literally getting ready to be executed, and one of the objectives failed to show. And I could not continue. It looked like it was almost to the end, and it didn't look like the two storylines were going to interact in any way other than his observations of your ship.
Well, the mission does remind me of the Next Generation episode where Riker goes to spy on the Malkorian.
Yeah, and in very much he basically gives this big disclaimer in the description that, look, there are these scenes that take place. Yes, you're beaming down. No, you're not really there. And he basically kind of has to ask you to step out of or set up a certain suspension of disbelief in order to kind of accommodate these
so he's trying to
scenes.
Have scenes that the player would not be a witness to.
Yeah.
Physically.
And it gets a little even weirder because some of the times you run around and talk to people to get their dialogue, which is more interaction with the scene you're not supposed to be there for.
So that's like a television episode, and
it is very. In fact, this is. I am very confident this is what he was going for.
Yeah,
and
it sounds like a TV episode.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, it very much did remind me of certain episodes of Star Trek. There was that one episode with Voyager, with the duplicate crew from the Class Y planet, where it's the entire episode, this plot about this alternate version of Voyager, basically in this very tragic ending. And at the very end, you have the real Voyager kind of cruising along. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Move on.
Yeah, they had no idea that anything in the episode that we'd seen had happened.
Yeah, and seemed, as far as I could tell, seemed to be the same thing, where there was, aside from the fact that your crew does spend a little bit of time on the planet, there is no interaction between the two stories.
So it seems to me like that's an at the very least, it seems to be a very interesting storytelling decision and way to do it.
Pull off.
And it was pretty clear from another second disclaimer at the beginning of the start of the first map that he has gotten some pushback for this decision.
I'm sure people just wouldn't understand it, or
he's only got 16 plays so far. But yeah, I mean, this is not going to be a mission that everybody is going to like. And there was one other.
You know what? Not everybody's going to love every mission.
And my advice to the author is to basically look, just accept that not everybody is going to like this mission. Don't worry about the ratings. Just enjoy the few people who do get it. The one other thing I want to bring up, though, is that he has got a very bizarre dialogue structure.
Okay.
He basically will start off each chunk of dialogue with basically the button that continues to the next page and then an end dialogue option.
Okay.
And so as you go through the dialogue, sometimes it'll branch and it'll have you backtrack with a button that says back to top, which I thought was very odd.
Okay.
But even in the ones that don't, the dialogue will loop back to the beginning with the first sentence and the end dialogue button.
Okay.
And he does this throughout, and it's very disconcerting.
Does it? I guess I was going to say if it only happens once or twice, maybe it's unintentional.
Yeah, no, he built every one of them like this.
Huh.
Well,
I've not played it, so maybe I will and have a look at the dialogue structure.
Definitely give it a try. I mean, especially if you want to see some very different storytelling. And
I find what you described to be like an interesting decision. I don't know whether I'm going to like it or not, but it's an interesting decision to try to use the game to tell it like a television episode where you're part of your character is part of things, but there are scenes that happen in that episode that, that you didn't see, that you weren't there for. That because of the Foundry, he can maybe put you, I don't know, like maybe behind, I wouldn't do much besides put someone behind a force field and let them watch.
Yeah. I will also say, though, there was a few things that I did really like about this mission. First off, his storytelling is very good. I mean, his dialogue was very well written. His alien race was very interesting. There's a lot of unusual characteristics of this planet. First off being, it's not a oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. It's like a methane-nitrogen atmosphere. So these aliens are literally breathing something else. Second of all, they look completely original. I mean, they are fairly different from anything I've seen. Thirdly, most of his sets, especially for the at least on the alien ground sets, were almost all custom. It looked like he had built pretty much all of them from scratch. And, I mean, he had towns and whatnot. I mean, for instance, you go to the alien character's home, and, I mean, it's all custom built, and it has open doorways where you can see the town outside. So there's definitely a lot of interesting things that makes this mission worth at least checking out.
Awesome.
What were you going to say, Mark?
Well, one of the more interesting alien race concepts I've seen in a Foundry mission was this one race that was actually capable of living in an atmosphere that contains a lot more sulfur. Actually, I believe what they said was that their home atmosphere contains sulfuric acid, which,
Which really makes me want something we can use to make the player put on an environmental suit. Because then we can do stuff like that and have it be really cool.
Well, the thing with this race, though, is that the members of this race were capable of going to a standard Class M environment and walking around just fine. It didn't,
So they can visit you.
Yeah.
Cool.
But,
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, this isn't the first time I've seen somebody try and do something like this, where essentially using the player as a camera rather than a player.
Mm-hmm.
Making non-player characters the main character. I believe it was a series done by, I want to say the name is Slick Rick, guy who comes into the chat rooms every so often.
Yeah.
And he had you essentially follow around a character as they met people, interacted with people, but it was very weird. It was very clunky. Because, I don't see how it couldn't be, how you could do that when it wouldn't be clunky, just given it the limitations of the Foundry and how the game is set up. But, yeah, and I haven't played, because it's a huge series, and I haven't played more than the first couple of episodes, and he said he did get better at it later on. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. It certainly opens up some interesting things.
So I think there are a lot of levels to it, actually. And part of it, amazingly enough, is how well the author reacts to the fact that there are just going to be people who don't like it.
Or don't understand it.
Or don't understand it, or don't see what they're trying to do, or there's 100 different ways to tell a story. And having the player character act as a camera is one thing. Having them act as an actor in a play is another. That's the issue is that we are in an environment where it's an MMO game that the people have spent the time to, in many cases, purchase their costuming that they want to have on themselves and their bops. That they've spent a lot of investment into creating who their character is that's about to go on this mission. Now, if that mission is I step into a holodeck and I'm the camera and I'm told to walk certain places and watch this story unfold, that's one thing. But if I'm told that no, unless I'm choosing the holodeck program to go into and be a part of, there needs to be some allowance, for the fact that most players are not going to want to play something that isn't their character. I think observation is different than forcing the player into the role of a character that's not their own.
It's funny, since I played this mission, I've been thinking about how best you would try to integrate such a format into the staging of the Foundry. Mm-hmm. And while I don't know for sure that this would actually work for this particular mission, I was thinking about what if you had the idea of having some kind of means or medium by which your captain observes these events. So it kind of almost becomes like a vision, where your captain feels like he's there, but nothing he does affects anything.
Nobody can see him.
Yeah. So
I think even the disclaimer is kind of enough. If you catch on to the fact that they're telling the story this different way. I like the idea of having it be something that you could see somehow with the player's captain.
Maybe the character has this memory crystal that he uses to record parts of his life, but it has an odd side effect that it somehow links with your captain, and he begins to witness these recorded scenes.
There's some similar things in Trek already.
Yeah.
The inner light.
Oh,
Right?
I mean,
Isn't
that would be
kind of
awesome. Would be to do a mission kind of loosely based on the inner light.
Style mission. Yeah, that'd be great.
There's a mission that I played that was more than just loosely based on the inner light. That's the one by Leviathan. What do you call it? The Inner Darkness. Leviathan 99. It was almost a direct continuation that incorporates much of the STO path to 2409 too. It was really well done.
I'll have to go play that. Well, let's move right along to discussion topics. And
you seem to have one. You
I
wouldn't
do,
tell us
yes.
about what you've been working on.
Well, I've been working on, a mission that I would like to get done before we can start making Foundry missions for Romulans. Essentially introducing this villain of Major Recall, the real one, who, as I said in a podcast a couple episodes ago, I kind of figure, she was supposed to have been assassinated so that Counselor Troy could take her place, aboard this warbird, and get this senator or proconsul out of the Empire. And so I figure, in the backstory to this mission, they botched the job. She was alive. She's been laying low for all this time, for 30-some-odd years, however long it's been. Now she's back with a vengeance, causing trouble, but this is where my thought processor breaks down. I'm at a bit of an impasse. So the mission's going to open up with you are called by Starfleet to rush to the scene of this attack. She's got some Breen mercenaries working for her. She was sighted. Nobody knows. It's a scientific research station, and she took something from it. Now, and you're going to go. The point is that you will go and you will track her all across the quadrant as she's collecting different pieces of equipment, and that's where I'm blocked. What is she doing? What's her end game? So I thought I would put that out to you guys, see if you can brainstorm. Let's come up with something cool. What is she after?
Well, the first question you need to ask is, why is she moving now?
That's a good question.
And I guess that partially has to do with what has she been doing up till now other than hiring mercenaries. I mean, we've got, 30-plus years?
Around 40 from that episode, I would think.
Yeah, so 40 years is a lot of time to be doing something. Was she hiding? Was she?
A lot of it she was recuperating, because I figured, she got injured in the attack. That's why.
Okay, so
at
most a couple of years recuperating.
Yeah. Well, one of my thoughts is that she somehow got trapped behind enemy lines, as it were. She got trapped somewhere in the Federation, maybe even on the Baku planet, where she's been living on all this time until she can escape.
Well, here's something to think about: is what if she? I mean, I know we had kind of tossed this around earlier, but I mean, what if she's been hiding in the Federation? I mean, she might be able to do a passable Romulan.
Vulcan.
Or Vulcan.
She might be able to do that, but
so
she also presumably bears some resemblance to Counselor Troy.
Some, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And especially for the EULA purposes of the Foundry, it is not exact.
Of course.
So maybe it was that her cover was blown. Or, I mean, it may be that she has finally discovered something with which to rise to power. Assuming, of course, she survived, she would naturally want to try to go back to the Tal Shiar.
Yeah, she's a Tal Shiar agent.
But, Counselor Troy did kind of pretty much set her up as a traitor.
Yeah.
So let's assume that she couldn't go back to the Tal Shiar, and more a fact that probably the Tal Shiar would try to have her killed. Everyone wants to kill her.
My reasoning is, if she were to resurface, they would think that she had done all that Counselor Troy did, and
turn her into an anti-hero.
So you have two options: either she has been holding on to this grudge for a long time and has only now found this means to rise to power, or she was forced to flee, actually managed to settle into her new life, but something disrupted it, and basically she's now dealing with the loss of her new life.
It'd be amusing if you could somehow find a way to add Talera to that story.
This would be the Romulan senator who assassinated the Senate?
No, that's Tal'Ara.
Oh.
Talera...
School me on that one. Okay, who are you talking
Well, actually, though, that does bring up an interesting point. Is the sheer number of Vulcan characters that have a name that is some variation of T'Pol.
T apostrophe something.
No, it just
P something.
there's like 4 different ones that have a different vowel in there. But anyways, Telera was the alias used by a Vulcan by the name of T'Pal or something, who it's spelled T-P-A-A-L. And Telera is spelled T-A-L-L-E-R-A. It was a Vulcan who was pretending to be a Romulan and was pretending to help these guys find this ancient Vulcan relic.
Oh,
and,
now I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
From TNG episode called Gambit. Yeah. That'd be interesting, but, I want to keep her as the focus. I want to keep Rakhal as the focus.
So then what's your end game with her?
Well, that's the question.
Not what's her end game. It's not the question. I don't think actually. I mean, we can throw dozens of ideas. I really like a lot of what Dragoon said, and that we could. But the real question is, where does your story end? Like, what is the point that Rakhal has to get to? Is she the villain that they defeat at the end of the story? My
thought with it is
your end game.
She is the villain that you defeat at the end of this mission, but she escapes into deep space with a cryptic warning that I'll be back, and then she will become sort of an overarching villain in a series of Romulan missions that I'm going to do. So it's going to be one of those.
So then, the big question.
A recurring character that you foil, but you don't kill her.
The big question then is the one that Dragoon asked you, which is why now, and why? The biggest question is why now, but what is the power that she sees in the opportunity that she sees in doing whatever it is that she's doing, whatever she's trying to assemble. If you started a scientific research station and stick to engineering and scientific stations, it's possible she's trying to assemble some sort of a new technology that cloaking technology. Who knows? And you can have her hit a couple of different kinds of a couple of different factions, institutions too.
What if
she's Romulan, if she's Romulan, she doesn't have to just hit Fed installation. She could hit a installation. She could hit an old Cardassian base. She could hit Breen.
Well, my thought is that she's got some Breen working for her. That's her muscle.
Okay.
What if she's trying to assemble an Iconian gateway? I mean, we've blown up enough of them. We should bound to have a few pieces around. What if the installations she's hitting are where Starfleet and or the Romulans are studying what Iconian technology they've gathered? You could go board for that matter too. But
I don't know. Those two seem a little bit overused at the moment.
Fair enough.
Have it be so. If you go with the idea that, and I think probably the first thing that springs to mind for me is she would be blamed for everything that Troy did. So that she can't go home again. She's a Romulan. She's a Tal Shiar who can't go back to the Tal Shiar, kind of deal. I really think that idea is great, especially if the Tal Shiar are really working with the Iconians, and maybe she doesn't like them. Maybe she doesn't like the Iconians any more than this is just one of the ways that my mind thinks about villains, is if she doesn't like them any more than the hero likes what the Iconians are doing, it makes her that much more difficult to want to defeat, because this is giving me an idea. Because if she succeeds, then, because if she's against the Tal Shiar because they're against her, she's also against all the Iconians that are working with the Tal Shiar. So,
yeah.
That
gives me an idea of, you said maybe she's assembling a new technology. What if she's assembling an old technology that several people have got their hands on pieces of it, but it's something that will work against the Iconians, something that was used in their initial defeat thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. But the player, of course, doesn't know that.
Another thought.
The player doesn't know that. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah.
I said that reminds me of what Talera was up to, because she was searching for a relic that predated the separation of the Vulcans and the Romulans. It was a weapon that
Pieces of it.
someone with psionic abilities could channel their psionic abilities through this the thing called Stone of Gaul and kill people.
But yeah, and this could be why she's acting now, is because she has finally heard enough, put these pieces of information together that the pieces of this technology have been found, and they're out there. And she has figured out how to assemble it. She's just got to go get the pieces.
I think I might have a better inciting incident.
Here you go.
Okay, so this has to do with what she's been doing this whole time. So let's assume for the minute that she was basically put on the kill list by the Tal Shiar. She flees to the Federation, poses as a Vulcan, actually manages to settle into a life she enjoys. At some point in the recent future, the Tal Shiar discover that she is still around and still alive. Where she is, they target her and manage to not kill her, or almost kill her, but also kill her a lover. At this point, she basically swears revenge on both the Tal Shiar and the Federation, the Tal Shiar who attacked her, and the Federation who failed to defend her.
Yeah, I'd say that'd be something I might put in background info. Something that you find out along the line.
You just want her to appear as a
villain.
villain. Yeah.
Isn't there one planet in the Alpha Centauri sector that, as part of the Star Trek Online story, this planet, even though it's a Romulan colony, petitioned for Federation membership because of of that whole Civil War thing in the aftermath of the Hobbit supernova?
I don't remember that.
Isn't this the mission where you go and help them cure the virus?
It's one where you help them.
Well, if I remember right, the
Talking
Federation,
back in the path to 24/9.
If I remember right, the Federation didn't actually accept the offer for these Romulans to actually join the Federation, but I think they did send foreign aid to the planet to help the people or something.
Yeah, but one thing you could do, I could set it as she was living on that planet or near it or a similar thing to that. Whereas even a neutral planet.
Oh, because it's like the perfect setting here, because it's this backwater colony world that got left in the dust of the Civil War.
Isn't this where the player character starts for Romulans?
Yeah, it's going to be similar to that, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Backwater colony world. We're all farmers.
Kane.
Hippiejohn hates it, but I like it. I like the idea of citizen soldiers.
I like the idea of citizen soldiers. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate the overall idea, because what you start out as is exactly what I want from the storytelling. A third bunch of Romulans who don't want that. Man, this is going to sound hilarious coming from someone who calls himself Hippiejohn. You're a third bunch. You start out as a third bunch who don't want anything to do with the Tal Shiar and whatever nonsense they're doing with the Iconians, nor do you want anything to do with Datan and his crazy space hippies on New Romulus. I don't, as the Romulan that I want to play a Romulan who is not compelled to go in either of those directions. And unfortunately, the Romulan Republic, and I think it's starting to make sense to me, because they want the characters to interact with the larger universe and the larger gaming community and the larger community of the MMO as a whole.
And they don't want you to be villains in this case. So you can't be part of the Empire as a whole. You got to be part of that.
Because basically they're more or less working towards reconciliation of all the player characters.
Yes. It's starting to make sense to me, but it's still, I would rather be that third faction of Romulans who can make their own choice. Like, they give me 4 choices rather than just 2. Don't make me choose just Fed or KDF. Let me choose Fed, KDF, the Romulan Tsar Empire, and the Tal Shiar, and let me also choose Datan's group if they're really set on the new Romulan Republic, which, hey, I'll go with it. But let me just give me more choice than
this. Historically, has not been an MMO where you do a lot of choice making.
Yeah, I mean, and I like everything as far as storytelling goes. Everything that I have heard in Stahl's interviews about how the story is being put, like, we don't even see, unless we log on with a KDF, character, just what kind of reshuffling they're doing with the episodes and what they're doing. But I like this whole idea that everything builds now to most characters from all factions being at level 40 when you hit that Cloaked Intentions episode, like the whole Romulan featured episodes. That's really smart storytelling, and then making everything past that goes past that into
everything that happens past that happens to everyone.
To everyone, and I that's really smart storytelling. It's really smart game design. I just don't want. I'm less enthused to play one of Han's people.
It's something that has never happened in the George R.R. Martin fantasy series, the Game of Thrones. It's all these. It's actually what I would like say is the Tom Clancy version of storytelling, where you start out with all these tiny unrelated story elements that all come together at the end.
Yeah, and I'm okay with it. I think it's really good storytelling. It just I'm totally okay with the fact that the Romulans that they're creating for us to play as playable Romulans may not be Romulans that I'm interested in playing. I'm okay with that. I don't have to be the target audience for everything that they do. No one does. There are going to be people who like it, and there are going to be people who hate it.
Out of curiosity, which kind of Romulan did you want to play?
Take a guess.
The Tal Shiar one?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so basically you wanted to play the bad guy.
He wants to be the. Yeah.
He wants to play
the Star Trek equivalent of the KGB.
Yes, absolutely. And they could create PvE missions for that sort of character, and that's actually what I want to talk about in the discussion topics, is how we're going to be able to use the Foundry, even though going into it we're not going to have the ability to create Romulan specific episodes.
Yeah, but
how can we use the Foundry to tell alternate kinds of Romulan stories for people who want to play one of those different kinds of Romulan stories?
Let's go ahead and move on to that. I've got lots of ideas to work with, so let's move on to that.
Cool.
Okay. Following up to what you said, Hippie, you could theoretically get a bunch of authors together and build an entire storyline around joining the Tal Shiar and then playing as one.
Mm-hmm. You could.
Now, since we know that you will need to pick a side at level 10,
right?
And we know that at level 10, people will still have to pick a side, but you could set all your Foundry missions so that the minimum level is below 10. Is any level?
So
the kind of
you can't do that though. It's been pretty much confirmed. I thought that you will not have access to Foundry missions as a Romulan until you have chosen until you have chosen an allegiance.
Now at that point, that's when you could start your alternate storyline.
Yeah,
because that's when people can start playing the Foundry.
But how do you
spin it off as okay, so you briefly allied with the Federation. You start off with you did it to get some gain. Then you take it and you take some gain that you got from the Federation or from the KDF. You steal it. You take it and join the Tal Shiar and defect with something really cool, or some sort of intelligence that they really wanted.
Yeah, it can. I mean, there's certainly ways to do it from the Allegiance standpoint. That I've even thought of do 2 copies of whatever your first mission in this group of people who actually want to tell like those stories of Tal Shiar agents rather than Republic heroes. They do one for KDF and one for Federation, and be like, okay, so this first story you can experience on either side. Beyond this, however, I'm building it all on X side, probably Federation. It just has better assets overall.
But by the time they play that first mission, haven't they already chosen a side?
Yeah,
That's sort of unclear.
they have.
Yeah.
Well, I think you will have to,
side.
because you're going to get the Foundry mission list for whatever side you choose
Yeah,
initially.
I think if you really want to do this, your best bet is to wait until you can make Romulan missions. The other option is to make duplicate missions for every single one.
Take up a lot of Foundry slots.
take up a lot of Foundry slots.
Well,
There is a maximum number of slots, which I think is like 36, right?
Yeah,
that's assuming that everyone.
48.
I was
48.
going
I
to
think.
say that only one person worked on it. I mean, if you got a lot of people to work on it.
Well, yeah.
If you got a lot of people to work on it, you'd get more people slots, but that also that would artificially inflate, at least in my case, the number of captains, of that 2 million that they said at the beginning of the year. Because if I run out of Foundry slots, if I'm ever working on so much stuff that I run out of 48 Foundry slots, which maybe a few years down the road I might, I would just open up another account and start grind up just enough dilithium to open up enough Foundry slots, and then just keep buying Foundry slots with the dilithium.
I don't think Crypto would be bugged that much if their number went up.
No, that would be the way I would keep telling stories.
No, but I mean, really, if you wanted to come up with leveling content for 30 levels, I mean, and that's assuming you don't go past, because most of the end-game content is written.
We can't do that in STO. The best we can do is provide people with a cool story. It would take so much Foundry content to level a character between 10 and 40. It would take a ridiculous amount of Foundry content. 1, because of the cap on XP per day, and 2, just because you're not getting, like, when you choose to do a mission, you're not getting that 6,500 or on an experience bonus 8 to 10,000 per mission kind of thing.
Something you could do is write companion missions to the normal storyline.
Once they come out, yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever played City of Heroes.
Yeah.
In the Going Rogue expansion, you choose a side, but you still kind of end up doing a lot of the same quests. The only difference is your intentions towards the class change. So basically, what if you wrote a bunch of companion missions that basically work on the premise that you are still doing the main storyline, but you are in fact a Tal Shiar agent infiltrating the Romulan Republic.
And the companion Foundry mission can be about, you report to the Tal Shiar about what you just did. They send you on another little mission that maybe undermines some of these things a little bit.
Well, yeah,
I mean, so that's a possibility.
No, since we don't actually know what the missions are about yet.
No, we don't. Obviously.
See, I think you're like I come back to, I think one of the safest things, you're right, is to just kind of wait until there's actually the ability to do it for Romulans. But we have no
not a lot, no.
We have no ETA on that. None.
Now, here's the other approach you could take, is completely reject any storyline that Cryptic's going to come up with. Put a disclaimer on it that says this is an alternate storyline.
Romulan story.
The way I want to tell it. Starting from whenever in the timeline you want it to start.
That could work. That could
kind
of work.
Just ask the audience to suspend this disbelief that they are playing out this alternate. You could set it in an alternate universe if you wanted.
That'd be kind of interesting. That would be an interesting thing to do with the Foundry in general. Ask someone to take that and when you're asking them to come into the mission, be like, go design yourself an alternate costume for a universe that's very scientific oriented, or something like that, and then have them start the mission and see who they are in an alternate universe or something.
And I played a mission that was a little bit like that a few weeks ago that I reviewed here. I can't remember what it was, his KDF mission, but he had a disclaimer, and he said, as with all my missions, this is set in the TOS, the original series time period.
So you went and put on your TOS?
I didn't. I should have, because it would have made it all even more fun.
Awesome.
And that's one of the things that I considered doing for my Mirror Universe mission, which has you infiltrate the Mirror Universe. I said, I should have had something in there that says, before you do this, go design some Mirror Universe uniforms for your guys.
I remember playing a mission once that had, as part of the instructions you're given when you accept the mission, to put on a Section 31 themed uniform before playing the mission.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things you can ask of your players. Whether they do it or not, of course, is up to them, but they're going to get more out of it if they go along with you.
I did What Lies Beneath, or not What Lies Beneath, but When Everything Old Is New. I went back in TOS Carb.
Nice.
Yeah, because there's a certain amount of people out there who will go ahead and roleplay with you.
Yeah.
And will love it for that.
I think if you do go that route, though, just accept, though, that there are going to be some people who won't get it.
Yes, it's that. As we said earlier in the podcast.
I think a big disclaimer for anybody who authors anything in the Foundry is you're writing something that hopefully people are going to read. And there are people who play the game who won't read what you write. So they're just not going to get it. So it's just true. There are people that all they want to do is just press F or mash the one key.
This is cool. I've got the chat room, the Starbase UGC chat room open here, and I think Kirkfat is working on a mission for the shuttle challenge.
I saw him enter that. Yeah,
and he posted a screenshot of looks like an interior asteroid mining facility, and oh man, that looks cool. I'm going to have to play these missions. These are going to be sweet.
I'm definitely interested to see what they come up with.
So I want to go back and look at all of the different challenge missions and see how many entries were in each one, and maybe figure out which ones are interesting to. Is it interesting to authors? I didn't know they were happening at first. The first one that I entered was right after I discovered the Foundry, because I realized that, wait a minute, there's challenges that happen. This is neat. And that was Kirkfat's challenge drew me into that. And I want to see how many people have entered, because this one seems to have a very small number of entrants, like 8.
Well, I think probably because it's a bigger challenge.
It's a difficult one.
It's very difficult.
Doing the small craft.
Funny, this has gotten me to thinking about something technically related to the Foundry. Is right now we don't have the ability to force a player to use a shuttle. But I was thinking about the fact, and I want to ask if anybody knows this, is the collision size for a full-size starship the same as a shuttle, or is the shuttle smaller?
I think the shuttle is smaller.
So what if the entrance to the first map, or in the first map you had to go through the entrance which was only big enough for a shuttle? A starship would just not fit through.
That does raise an interesting question about things such as patrol escorts, which are for a starship extremely small.
Yeah, so there's the issue.
Yeah.
I think that there are some starships that are going to be small enough to and you know what? There are going to be people who want to be able to do that. They're going to bring in their bug ship. They're going to try to get their bug ship in, or they're going to try to get their Defiant in. And you know what? Cheers, great. More power to them.
There's some people who are going to play it very differently. Some people are going to rush right by a little thing that says "Bring your shuttle." Right. And some people are going to intentionally brush right by that thing that says "Bring your shuttle."
Yep.
Some are going to wave at the "Bring your shuttle" sign as they go by.
So I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities there, and I'm really interested to see what people come up with.
Oh,
Yeah.
while you
I
guys
do.
were talking, I did some research on StoWiki, and I wasn't able to find the name of a system that tried to become a Federation member, or a former Romulan colony that tried to become a member of the Federation. I did, however, find the names of 3 places that used to be Romulan that were established as colonies by the Romulan Star Empire, but are no longer actually, part of the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is Agrama, but Agrama is not, what you would call it's not a planet that I would expect to try to become a Federation member. Let's put it that way. But it used to be a Romulan colony at one point in time. The others are spelled R-H-I, and Rashana. Both of them used to be Romulan colonies, but after that whole Civil War thing, they decided to cut their ties with the Romulan government.
Yeah, Rashana is the one that shows up in an in-game mission. Let's see, because I played all of these here, so recently, and posted little summaries. It's called Friend of My Enemy, and read you my little summary. It says, in the interest of better relations with Romulan border worlds, you aid the plague-ridden colony of Rashana by transporting medical supplies. On entering the system, you destroy a group of Reman ships that are attacking Romulan freighters. The plague was actually engineered by the Remans, which you defeat and synthesize a cure.
Yeah.
These are the bad Remans, not the good Remans.
Bad Remans, yes.
Yeah. Also,
Bad Raymond.
patrol the Sierra sector and Re System Patrol are the ones where you go to Re, but the system description of Re is that it's a planet that has taken in refugees from Romulus, a temperate M-class world that many residents compare to the lands around the Apnex Sea on their lost homeworld, which I guess by lost homeworld they're talking about Romulus. The colonists voted against rejoining the Romulan Star Empire and submitting to Praetor Terrace's rule. Since then, they have struggled to remain independent.
And I think that's some good storytelling things you can mine there. Is, talk about these Romulan worlds that are at the far-flung edges of what used to be the Empire. What are they doing in all this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, those two that I just talked about are along the Federation border. That's probably part of the reason why they're trying to be independent. Is they would, one of the
They probably need help from the Federation economically.
Well, one of the past 2409 things, if I remember right, anyways, mentions that there were some of the worlds on the edge between Federation and Romulan territory that, at one point in time at least, tried to join the Federation, even though they were populated by Romulans. I don't think that the Path of 2409 information actually named any of them, though.
Yeah, I don't recall any of that. But it's a really long piece of writing, that Path to 2409. It's easy to miss a few things when you're skimming through it.
Plus, they had like those supplementals and whatnot.
Yeah,
Now there's
of
the whole Romulan thing too. There's the whole Romulan data chips as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a whole new thing to collect.
Which actually Psychotic Vulcan was nice enough to post those for me, and I've added those to that lore thread that I've created.
Awesome. Cool.
Well, Greendragoon, did you have a topic for us?
Quick thing I wanted to bring up, and this was actually a direct question someone asked me, and asked that I would talk about it. And it's not going to be a long one, but the question was, and I quote, is it considered arrogant to make your own characters, or player characters, the focus of a Foundry mission? And my answer is emphatically no, especially if you can make them work in a good story.
No, and especially because, for a lot of players, how are they going to know?
Yeah,
arrogant, I don't think. No.
Well, I actually did, in one case, write one of my characters into one of my missions that I did, but that was because of the fact that that particular character had a very odd backstory that I'd written, and it was something that fit with the mission I was writing. So, you know.
And I wish Bazag were here for this discussion, because he has done that quite a lot. He has several missions that are revolve around one of his player characters.
One thing I will say is that it's important to remember that the person playing the Foundry mission, their captain, is meant to be the hero.
Bam.
And generally, you need to respect that. Other than that, you can work in as many of your characters and have plot elements around them as much as you can reasonably fit in.
Yeah.
The Foundry is a great way to explore your, to put your player characters, backgrounds out there. There's something that you've taken time to write, but there is a danger. It might not be arrogant. I don't know what the word is, but if you allow your character to become more important than the star of the story, then
it basically alienates the player.
Yeah. You want them to be that great guest star rather than the main character.
Well, in my case, it was actually a relatively minor guest character or
a cameo.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah, pretty much, because if you were to brush through the story and not pay attention, you would notice a character in a Starfleet uniform, and a rather odd-looking Starfleet uniform at that, who happened to have the same ears as a Vorta, and you would wonder, why the heck is that character standing over there? Especially since it's a KDF mission.
Yeah, so there's definitely sort of two ways to do it. Is either, they're that important guest star, or they're a cameo.
Yeah.
I've actually done it in reverse, where a couple of times when I've started new player characters, I've based them on my Foundry characters.
I managed to find that thing about the Romulan colony that was trying to become a member of the Federation.
Yeah.
Volume 11, Chapter 3 of the 2409 lore. The planet's name was Kalbak.
Which is something that's not in-game.
Yeah.
That planet itself.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I don't think...
But I haven't gone looking either, so...
Yeah, it's only in... It's mentioned in the 2409 lore stuff, and as far as I can tell, that's the only place where it exists. Ooh, that reminds me of a fun bit of trivia. You remember the solar system called Vega, where the Starfleet tutorial takes place?
Yeah, the Vega colony.
How could we forget?
Here's the fun part. At one point in time, you could actually use mission replay to replay the mission for that section of the story. The catch...
That'd be fun to do.
The catch is that you can't ever actually go there if you use mission replay. Vega's not linked to anywhere on the galaxy map, and for some unknown reason, warp to location, the little transwarp button thing, doesn't pop up for that mission.
It's because that transwarp to location thing was built after that mission.
After that tutorial.
Yeah, that's a pretty recent addition.
And one of my Federation admirals has that mission stuck in her mission log because I can't drop it, and I can't actually complete the mission either. Oh well.
Yeah. Bug.
That is a bug.
Yeah.
I don't know how you got the tutorial mission.
When
I
they
certainly can't.
first added mission replay to the game, they made it so that you could replay pretty much anything, including the tutorial.
Now here's a question: that the stuff from that tutorial mission, those maps are not in the Foundry, are they?
No.
I've
not seen them.
No,
they're not.
Because I don't think the ground with the colony is not.
The Vega colony ground map is in the game. There's a catch. There are no buildings on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I actually poked around and managed to find the Vega ground map. It is in there, and if you look close at it, you can see all of the pathways that a player would take walking around the map. You can see the spots on the ground where the various buildings would be in the tutorial map.
Yeah, but you could rebuild all that, couldn't you?
Yeah, because it's just the regular old buildings. I assume the regular Fed buildings.
Actually, if I remember right, this one had some interesting stuff because of the fact that it, let's see here, some of the Borg structures on there would be either complex to construct or were actually special assets that they created specifically for the tutorial. Because one of them has this thing where you it has Borg in their little alcoves standing on the outside of a building on the ground, which is a bit odd. I'm not sure how many of those Borg alcove props you could actually put on an exterior map. And it had a few other odd things like that they're part of the tutorial mission, but they're not things that you can actually do in the Foundry, like turrets. It had turrets in the map somewhere.
But that's one of those things where, is something we could add to the asset request list.
Turrets,
and
turrets is an enemy mob.
You wonder if, because we have this map that doesn't have any of the objects on it, wonder if those objects are separate somehow, that they'd be easy to add into the Foundry. Because that's what Zero can do, is she can add those objects in that are separate, that are already sort of cut up.
Yeah.
I mean,
easy is a relative term, though.
I don't know about easy because I don't know how she does it. I don't know how anybody does it. There's a reason I'm not a game dev.
Yeah, she can grab objects that were designed to be separable. But
the shipboard part of that mission is also not in the Foundry.
So the way I understand it, the way the geometry coding is done in the cryptic maps requires you to actually do a whole lot of work to separate things out of the map. Sometimes, at least. It depends on what type of object.
Depends on how the map was built, I think.
It depends on how they import it. I imagine in a lot of cases they will import more complex thing as a single object, probably to get around some of the limitations on object limits, because they have their own set of object limits they have to deal with. Things like floors are going to all be one solid object, just so that they don't have to deal with any seams.
Okay.
The walls could be that way. I'm not sure.
Because
I tell you that's one reason I would love to interview Zero to see how her process works, how she imports these things, what can't be imported easily by her, and what those limitations are.
At one point in time, all Foundry props were static objects. That's been changed, so I'm hoping that in the future they'll add more props that have dynamic capacity. I mean, like there are actually in the Foundry things that look like turrets. When those were originally added as props, they didn't move at all. But now they'll kind of like they're scanning for targets. They'll shift back and forth.
Oh, components of them will sort of rotate around, just like
that's
like an idle animation. Yeah.
I think that that occurs because of an upgrade to what turrets look like somewhere else in the game. That happens all over there. Like when they upgrade a ship type when they upgraded Klingon, the lower level ships, I think it's the Vorcha that can now, not like now, it's been happening for a while, but they upgraded it to suddenly be able to fire the bioneurals. And it was done for one part of the game. And I'm sure they thought about it, but it made all of a sudden those earlier level Klingon missions really interesting when you're playing and they start to drop bioneurals on you and you're like, whoa, I'm second level, what's going on?
Or when you're doing Night of the Comet and the TOS era D7 suddenly starts shooting them at you.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's a Foundry example too, because they updated, I can't remember when exactly, but at some point they updated the look of the ground Cardassians.
Uh-huh.
They gave them, I don't know, it's like bigger, huge shoulder and collar pieces. And they didn't used to have those. But as soon as they added that into the game itself, any Cardassian mob that we put down had those. Had the
no matter what.
look.
I would assume that they reference the same geo files.
Yeah. Because I think what it sort of does is it puts a tag into the game that tells it to spawn this here. It's the same thing that it would spawn if it was a cryptic mission.
I don't know. Yeah. It made it sound like there was some fairly complex process to getting a object into the Foundry. And
I'm sure there is.
I don't know that it's a super complex. I think it's just time consuming and probably, to be honest, probably a bit boring.
Yeah, and
probably a bit boring.
Timberboy went into a rather complex description about what it takes to even make a simple mission, and there is like a huge amount of time-consuming process just with versioning. I mean, yeah. I'm not surprised that I'm glad that Zero is excited to be adding stuff for Foundry authors to play with. Yes, because we're excited to come up with things for her to add.
Right.
I'll tell you, it's better than not adding anything.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's very true.
It's more than the PvP
it's allowing me to build this cool half-flooded TOS era space station that I'm doing. Otherwise,
half-flooded space station. You're going to have to elaborate on that one.
A little bit, anyway. Yeah.
Okay, so this mission with Major Recall is sort of weird because I have what the beginning map's going to be like, and I have what the ending map's going to be like. The ending is going to be set on this space station that has set down on a planet. It was something that was, hard enough to damage it, where it was sort of unused and going to be abandoned anymore. But it's still mostly intact.
So they crash landed. They didn't just crash.
Yes. It didn't just crash and blow up. Most of it is still intact, but it's partially submerged and half flooded. You start out on the outside, and the outside is actually inspired by Greendragoon's awesome crashed starship, by the way.
Well, if you pull this off, it's going to be an impressive sight.
Yeah, and you go in, you go down a staircase to this half-flooded section. It's not going to be a staircase, it's going to be a ramp. You go down to this half-flooded section, you probably go up to some sections that aren't flooded, but that's where the ending of it's going to take place. That's where you're going to have your confrontation with Major Recall. Whatever that's going to be like, I have no idea. But I think it's going to be cool.
One thing that I've been pondering that I think would be an interesting idea, but I've not come up with an exact reason for doing it yet, would be taking the Barge of the Dead map and making people wade through the red water.
How deep is that red water?
I do
not very, actually. It's not. And
it's like the ride at Disney World.
It
looks deeper than it is.
Well, because here the thing with the red water is that it reflects the surface, so that when you're looking down at the water, you're not actually seeing into the water. You're seeing a reflection of the sky, so you can't really see into the water.
Oh, so the red is all in the reflection map.
Well, no, it's not. That's the funny part with this. Is that there's like 3 different ways of looking at that, the red water, and the results are somewhat different depending on how exactly you do it. Okay, anyways, I just pulled up the Vega ground map in the Foundry, and there is actually a map in Foundry named Vega ground. I'm not entirely sure it's the one from a tutorial, though. It might be from a different mission involving Vega.
Now, there was an STF that involves Vega. I think it's Kittimer Accord.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I think that's what the map is, actually. I'm fairly certain of it.
The Kittimer Accord doesn't have you running around on the surface, though, for the STF.
It doesn't?
Yeah.
It's so long since I've played that.
I haven't played it.
No, you're not on the surface anymore.
Maybe you used to be.
They used to be?
But
one
thing I have noticed here, though, is that the way I understand it, the Kittimer Accord STF supposedly takes place on the same planet that you run. Oh, yeah. It is the same. It is okay. The Vega ground map in the Foundry is the same colony that you're on in the tutorial mission. The catch is that it's not the same map from the tutorial. It's the one from the old STF. The difference is that there are less board props on the ground, and when you look around, it looks like a regular colony, not a I guess you could say what you had in the tutorial, because in the tutorial
I think it's what used to be the STF.
Yeah,
because they changed those all around now.
Yes, because in
and we had the versions of the maps from the original STFs when they launched. Those are the versions we have.
Yeah, because this map, it actually has the same basic layout as the one from the tutorial. I mean, it appears to have the same town in the middle of the map as from the tutorial, but it has these towers that, in the tutorial version, you have these weird board structures at these locations that you have to, take out and stuff. But in this version, you have what appear to be, parts of the colony that are there, and not
parts that would be assimilated.
Yeah, it's not board stuff. It's Federation stuff.
Cool. Well, let's see. Greendragoon, did you have a topic for us? Or no, we did you.
Gave you one.
Mark, did you have a topic for us?
Well, I was thinking about discussing the recent Romulan history and how that would impact Foundry mission.
Which we've definitely done a little bit of.
Because there are a whole lot of things from... Well, I mean, it's actually been a rather long thread on the forum discussing the many ways in which Romulan history has, shall we say, continued forward since their last appearance in the movies. Because, well, a large part of the Path of 2409 thing is explaining what happened to the Romulan Star Empire between Star Trek Nemesis and the beginning of the story in Star Trek Online. A large chunk of it is also explaining where exactly how exactly the current incarnation of the Klingon Empire came to be. It's like, why did the Klingons go to war with the Gorn and try to subjugate them and all that great stuff?
They went to the war with the Gorn because they thought the Gorn had been taken over by Undyne, didn't they?
Well, actually, the truth is that some of the Gorn leaders had been replaced by Undine. But, well, it's I guess it's one of those things where it's not really quite as simple as it sounds at first, but
it's definitely a good read.
Yeah.
If anything, if you're looking to, and there's sort of several schools of thought on this, is whether or not you want your mission to fit in with Star Trek Online canon, which is, of course, everything that the game has written in that has happened since Star Trek Nemesis. Mm-hmm. And some people do. I like to have my missions fit in with the game, so it is sort of seamless. There's lots of people who do not. There's people who absolutely, I've run into people who absolutely reject any of the things that happen in STO as not being in any way canon and not have happened.
I'm starting to wonder if they may have managed to at least come up with a half-baked fix for that disappearing bridge officers bug, because I'm running around Vega ground right now, and I've noticed that instead of dying after my bridge officers fall off the map, eventually they reappear standing next to me.
I thought there was something in the code for BOs that if you get a certain distance away, they'll try to warp to you.
Yeah, there might be.
I find that they disappear and reappear, and nothing about trying to test the Foundry works. So,
well, yeah, especially
the bug is still there, though.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the bug that caused them to disappear is definitely still there, but unlike before, they're not disappearing permanently.
I found that it varies somewhat in behavior based on map.
It's intermittent, yeah. I don't know how to say it other than that. It's intermittent.
Well, one of the Bajorn interior maps has an interesting feature where whenever your bridge officers disappear, they warp to the top floor of the map and then start to attempt to run down to wherever you are on the map. They might re-disappear or they might not. But they don't, like fall off the map and die. They disappear and relocate to a different part of the map. And something similar is happening in Vega, where they warp to this clearing that's way off in a corner of the map instead of falling through the floor.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. When did Preview become so crazy?
Season 7?
I think Patrol.
Oh, seriously,
Patrols did it.
Yeah, pretty much Family Launch Patrols is the same time as...
Because I think that altered the way Preview
works for your boss.
Well, I don't know about boss, because they were always a little weird.
The one map that we've discovered doesn't have any pathing data is the one where the boss behave like they used to.
Yeah.
Which would be Argalius 2.
But I remember way back when it was right after Season 4, where I had a bunch of, I was building starship interiors, and I had a bunch of doors, the kinds of doors there's mostly a wall and then there's a little door in it that opens. And the boss just could not negotiate those.
Well,
they could do it in preview.
Doors are
couldn't do it in published.
For bridge officers to navigate through. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I took him out of most of that mission.
Now, one thing I noticed that's interesting on the Vega ground map is that the location that your bridge officers warp to, it's not the 0 coordinates. It's not. I don't know why they're warping to this location, but they're not moving to the 0 coordinates like they do on some maps.
It could be that this is some kind of anchor point in the map design. It may not necessarily be 0.
It's not the default spawn location, because the default spawn location is, it's literally halfway across the map.
I mean, it could literally be something like an object that gets placed in the map during creation that basically his sole job is to store a bunch of data about the map for accessing later.
Something that the devs put in there.
Yeah, it may not be anything that's visible to us.
Well, kind of like the default spawn point that you always end up with on when you create the map, but
not necessarily.
Not the exact thing. I don't know.
That may actually be something that's set up when they made the map a Foundry map.
Another one that I've noticed that has an odd location that your bridge officers disappear to is the NDC 4447 interior map. Instead of warping to the 0 coordinates, your bridge officers warp to this location in one of the hallways that it's like way off in a dark corner of the map. But it's, it's some place that you could theoretically at least walk to if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it may have just been like some system object that happened to get placed there that is in some way related to all the other objects. It's like a property object, maybe.
That's the thing, though, is that I can't think of anything that these two locations have in common with each other.
Well, they won't, other than it just happens to be the place that this particular object was placed.
If said object exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm theorizing.
There's a lot of background behind-the-scenes things that we don't really know about because, it does it for us. And there may be sort of, new behavior that's interacting in ways that they never anticipated, and so it's causing this bridge officers disappearing and warping effect. And they're just going to a random location.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of game design or work with game engines. Actually, I have a 3D degree on my wall that doesn't get much use. But yeah, I think I worked a little bit with, I think it was the Unreal or whatever Blue Mars uses. And it basically, there are a lot of times there will be these invisible objects that are basically there to either act as spawn points or basically set up events or just define parameters for the engine to read. It's kind of like classes in programming, if anybody knows anything about that.
All right.
It's like visual classes. So they have 3D coordinates, but their presence on the map, its position is purely arbitrary. It's just there
Yeah.
for the engine to reference, and someplace for the editors to access. So they can click on this object, set the properties, and be done with it.
Okay.
Well, as we're running into our time limit here, I'll say this. I'll leave you guys with this. Be thinking about, for next time, about bugs. What are your favorites? What ones do you absolutely hate? What ones are vital to your mission that you absolutely hope they don't fix?
I think I answered that question today.
And let's talk about bugs next time. Sound good?
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Bugs sound good.
But for tonight, we will say good night.
All right.
Right?
Good night, everybody.
Good night.